So let's start with a poll. You can enter your opinion or thought in the comments. Talk it over with the people you're watching with at home. Do you think human beings, generally speaking, are more prone to making peace or making enemies? Obviously, we're talking in broad strokes. Generally speaking, do you think that humans are more inclined to make peace with other people in situations, or are we more prone to making and keeping enemies? What do you think? I was wrestling with that question this week, and I thought about how you've probably heard this, I know I have, when you and other folks were heading into a big family gathering, or maybe it was a big gathering of friends, and somebody said, maybe you said it, I just hope so-and-so keeps the peace. Which is ironic, right? Because what that person actually meant was, what they were acknowledging is, there's no peace. We've been existing in a tense, anxious situation, and we hope that we can just kind of keep the status quo going and nobody's feathers gets ruffled. There's no more peace, but maybe there's like no more disagreement. We just kind of act like things are okay. I don't know about you. I don't think we're prone to making peace. I don't think we're prone to step over the battle lines we've drawn, to step across the line in the sand that we've made and say things like, if we were in the wrong, which oftentimes we have some part to play in it, right? I don't think we're prone to stepping across and saying, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I want to make it right. I don't think we're prone to do that as individuals, as groups, as parties, as countries. I don't think it's in our nature. And yet Jesus calls us into a new life. He says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." We've been in a series called Blessed, Jesus' words for people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We've been looking at this series of phrases that Jesus says at the beginning of one account of his life, the Gospel of Matthew. And he's saying these words in a sermon, a big block of teaching, and he's saying it to his closest followers as they get ready to embark on their 3 years long mission. He's coaching them up a little bit about what his version of blessed is. And that's what he says. One of the last statements he makes about what it means to be blessed. He says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." We'll come back around to peacemaking, but just like each one of these statements, there's like a yin and a yang. There's a heads and a tails to it. There's a blessed are the ... for ... There's one clause and then a second one. We got to address something really quick before we talk about peacemaking, because we could very easily misunderstand something that Jesus says here, and it could really mess us up before we even set out. The thing is with the Bible, we keep talking about this all the time, you got to wrestle with it. That we can find the treasure that God intends for us to find, but we got to wrestle with the Bible. If we just skim things off the surface or just read them at face value, there's a good chance we're going to miss out on that rich treasure that Jesus means to give to us. And that's certainly true with the second part of this statement. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. See, because a lot of times we make that into a caution, big word, a transactional situation. What do I mean by that? Well, it's just like you or I going to Walmart, and there's something that we want. We go looking for it. Maybe we don't find the exact thing we want, but we find something close enough. We grab it up. We go to checkout. Hopefully there's not too big of a line. We go to the check yourself out station. We scan it. We put it into a bag. We swipe our card. So we've given something, and now we're going to get something in return. Transaction. We hear this statement and we think that Jesus is saying, if you do this, you will get this. That's what the church, and I mean the big church universal, has made religion to be about for a long, long time, and it's caused a lot of harm, and it's caused us to miss out on the beauty and wonder of Jesus. We think that it's like, if I do the right things, if I say the right things, if I believe the right things even, I'm going to get something in return. I'm going to get more blessings. I'm going to be more blessed. I'm going to get better circumstances in my life. Things are going to improve for me. Most of all, I'm going to get heaven. If I do the right things, say the right things, believe the right things, I'm going to get something in return. The point of Christianity is not transaction. It's not destination. It's relationship. And all the transformation and beauty that comes with it. That's why it's called Christianity, Christ-ianity. It's God in the flesh showing who God is to us and inviting us into a relationship. The point of all things, it's Christianity. It's not heavenanity or heavenism. It's about our relationship with God and our relationship with each other. And yes, there is a destination where all that is headed. It's the name of our church, HeavenEarth. All things being made new, Jesus says. A new heaven and a new earth. The city of heaven coming to earth. Right here, right now. It's not a transaction, though. It's about being in a relationship with Christ, following after Christ, practicing the things he says and does, and yes, believing in him. Yes, trusting that he is the Christ and knows the way. Putting those things into practice, and when we do, here's what I want to challenge you to think today. It's not that we receive something as much as we wake up to it. What if Jesus is telling us that if you come after me, that's what the Greek literally means, the original language. When he says to his first followers, follow me, it means come after me. He's not asking us to go anywhere he first hasn't gone. He says, come after me. If we go after him and practice these things that he's asking us to practice, to trust in him, to lay down our sense of what we think reality is and go after his, we are going to wake up to what our name is, who we really are, who our neighbors are, and what everything is about. I think of it this way. My kids, they were named something before they were born. We had a name for them. My daughter Iva, she was named Iva before she was ever born. And when she was born in those first days and months, if we said Iva, she didn't go, yes. She didn't even look at it. She didn't know what her name was. Slowly, as we keep calling her that name because it's precious to us, means a lot to us. Now she's turning and like, yes, she's responding to it. She's not yet 2 years old. And now she beats her chest like a gorilla or something, or a cave woman, and she goes, Iba. Like Iva with a B. She's starting to call herself by her name. She still doesn't know the story of it. That her great-grandmother's name was Iva. Her great-grandmother who raised my father. As she gets older, we'll teach her the story of her name, what Jesus might be getting at with us. If you come after me, the Christ, you invest in this relationship, you practice the things I'm asking you to practice before you fully understand them, you're going to wake up to the truth about everything, including what your name is, child of God, human, made in the image of God. And you're going to know that about your neighbors. You're going to know that about everything. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. But what is peacemaking? How do you make peace? I was so inclined to go into some philosophical exploration of what is peacemaking, but I realized I would fly in the face of what Jesus is saying, because peacemaking is an action. You don't talk about peacemaking, you do it. And so let me just start off with that. What can you do every day to make peace with God? What can you do every day to make peace with yourself? What can you do regularly, right now maybe, to make peace amongst your family, your friends? What can you do to make peace in your community, at your work, in your world? Think about that. What can you do daily to make peace with God? What can you do daily to make peace with yourself? What can you do to make peace with family, with the relationship in your family that's not gone well, that's fallen out? What can you do to make peace amongst friends, a friendship where it's not gone well? What can you do to make peace in your community, in your society, in your world, right? Because this is not just a you thing. It's not just an I thing. There is a lack of peace in us, in our relationships, in our society, and in our world. We're not prone to peacemaking. We're prone to enemy making and enemy keeping. And notice Jesus doesn't say, blessed are the peacekeepers. You can't keep peace when it doesn't exist yet. You got to make it. Notice I started with, how can you make peace with God? Here's the good news. You will never be the person to make the first step in that scenario. God has done it already every day with you. God becomes flesh in Jesus to walk the earth with us and to show us what God's heart really is, to teach, to heal, to sit with sinners, to sit with the unworthy and unclean, to die, to send a message, to destroy death and evil and sin, and to rise up so that we too will wake up and rise up now and forever for all eternity with Christ. God comes to make peace with us. And he says, the ball's in your court now. Will you receive it? Paul says it this way. If you don't think that's true, listen into this. First of all, this is in Romans. It's a letter to a group of Christians in Rome who are struggling to be Christian, to be honest with you. The guy who wrote this letter to people, he says in chapter 5, verse 6, while we were still weak, at the right moment, Christ died for ungodly people. It isn't often that someone will die for a righteous person, though maybe someone might dare to die for a good person. But God shows his love for us God shows his love for us. I'm going to stop right there for a minute. Jesus didn't change, as I've said before, Jesus didn't change God's mind about us. Jesus shows us how God's mind was already made up about us. But God shows his love for us because while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were wandering, missing the mark, thinking that we were enemies forever and always of God. So now that we have been made righteous by his blood, we can be even more certain that we will be saved from God's wrath through him. Again, if you read that and think, oh, God hates us, hated us, angry at us, destined us for destruction. Jesus is God the Son. God the Father and God the Son can't be in bitter disagreement. They're so united in nature and mission. They're one God. God loves us. If we were reconciled to God, how much more certain is it that we will be saved by his life? If we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son while we were still enemies, now that we have been reconciled, how much more certain is it that we'll be saved by his life? While we were still enemies, while we thought ourselves to be enemies. Ross, that's not what it means. Well, give me a second. I got to find this other verse. In Colossians, it's another letter. Listen to this, Colossians chapter 1, verse 21. Once you were alienated from God, and you were enemies with him. Wait for it. In your minds, not in God's mind, which was shown by your evil actions. But now he has reconciled you by his physical body through death to present you before God as people who are wholly faultless and without blame. You don't make yourself blameless. He does. God has come to make peace, to be a peacemaker. He goes before us in that. Will you receive it? What will you do to make peace with yourself? You're so certain that you're an enemy of God because of something that you've done. You'll never forgive yourself. Is that right? Or maybe somebody hurt you. Their harmful actions have made you ashamed, made you feel unworthy and unclean. And so you're sitting in a corner by yourself thinking you're an enemy of God. This says it's not true. So show up daily to God. Here I am, Lord. I receive the love and peace that you've given. I'm sorry for how I have not honored that love. I'm sorry for how I've made myself out to be an enemy in my head, heart, and life. I want to go be a peacemaker like you today. What can you do every day to make peace with God, to make peace with yourself? Put it in the comments. Think practically. And then, what can you do to make peace, to take the peace that you've received deeply into your heart and soul and life? By the way, I should say, if you've never fully received that peace of Jesus, Jesus says, I give you peace, not as the world gives. If you've never set out and said, I belong to Jesus, I want to give my heart and life to Jesus, please tell me. Maybe you're feeling moved today. I want to go after Jesus for the first time in my life today. Let me know. We want to help you in that journey of waking up to what your name is, who you are. But then we have to take that peace we receive deep down into our heart and life and go share it. Go make peace with friends and family, coworkers. You can do your part. Then just like God did with us, it'll be in their court then. You can't control. If you've pursued reconciliation and somebody else isn't receiving that, you can't control that. But by God, do your part, whatever it is. That doesn't just mean for our relationships with family and friends. It means our lives and our communities and society. Peacemaking comes with humility. I believe the most important phrase that we have to embrace in our time, especially those of us who have been in positions like where we've got things a little bit easier. We haven't had much hardship. Maybe we've been in a position of power. Maybe we're the ones who've been doing the wrong stuff. The most important phrase in peacemaking is, I was wrong, and I'm sorry, and I want to make it right. We need that. In our age of political division, you don't belong to a party, you belong to a Messiah, a peacemaker. Act like it. In a world with political division, racial injustice, and violence, let us be people who take seriously that we've got a role to play in the peacemaking, and it might begin with saying, I was wrong, I'm sorry, and I want to make it right. Not just reading perspectives from our echo chamber, but reading from people who we've decided are enemies on the other side of the line we've drawn in the sand. Okay, maybe you're right. That might be true, but take seriously that you could be wrong. And take risks. Once you've grounded yourself in the peace of Christ, in who you are, whose you are, don't be going out there and making peace to earn your identity. Your identity in God can't be increased nor diminished, only realized. Once you've received that peace from Christ, be bold in making it in your life. I'll tell you one quick story to end. A guy who I think makes peace real well in the Bible. It's an example we've given before. It's a guy by the name of Zacchaeus. We've told this story. But talk about a guy who made some enemies. Woo! He was a chief tax collector. A lot of our enemy making and enemy keeping, the lines we draw in the sand, start with how we want to increase something for ourselves. We want to become wealthier. We want to become more powerful. We want a better title. We want better status. That was true for Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, so he cozied up with some people who were doing corrupt things so that he could move up on the ladder, so he could get wealthier. And he did it at the expense of some of the people who were closest to him. They did not like him. So he started to feel that. He started to feel in his gut that he had made himself an enemy of lots of people, including God. How do we know it? Jesus rolled into town, and he felt so bad about himself that he wanted to see Jesus, but he was like, I can't see him from up close. Yeah, he was a small guy in stature, literally. So yes, he climbs up in a tree to see Jesus, but also I think it's about how he doesn't want to get too close. Maybe he feels ashamed. He doesn't have the courage yet to make peace. He can't take that first step. He's up in the tree, and then Jesus sees him and says, hey, come on down. God always makes the first step. That's called grace. Then Zacchaeus comes down after God's made the first step. Zacchaeus knows the ball's in his court, and he says out loud, like, basically, here it is. I was wrong. I'm sorry, and I love you, and I want to make it right. If I've stolen from people, I want to pay it back. He says, like, I want to pay back the people I've taken from 4 times as much. Sometimes making peace is not just about saying I was wrong and I'm sorry. It's about doing something to repair the wrong you've done. And Jesus says, do you hear this? It's not a transaction. It's not, oh, Zacchaeus gave me something, now I'm going to give him something in return. No, he's celebrating with Zacchaeus because Zacchaeus has woken up. And Jesus just wants to say out loud what he's woken up to, that he is a child of God who has just announced to Jesus he's made peace with God, he's made peace with himself. People around him heard, people he'd wronged heard, I mean to make it right. Not everybody that wasn't good enough for everybody. When you try to make peace, it ain't going to please everybody. But Jesus says, listen up. Salvation's come to his household. Jesus means to go eat with him. I forgot that part. Eating with tax collectors. That was Jesus' habit. Salvation's come to his household, for he too is a son of Abraham. Which is a way of saying it's not your lineage or heritage that makes you a son of God. It's God who makes you a son of God. And it's the fruit that you bear with your heart and life when you receive God's peace and you've started to make it in your life. What are you making with your life? Your life's making something. For all of us, I hope that we're producing the fruit of peace, rooted from deep down in the peace that's been deposited into our soul, not as a transaction, but as a grand gesture of love from Jesus. Go in peace.